Welcome to the 12 Hike Podcast, where we talk about all the ways you can get outdoors. I'm Zach Jenkins. Thanks for listening. When you hear the word hardcore, what comes to your mind? I know for me, I think about people jumping from airplanes, doing ridiculous jumps on dirt bikes, anything that's extravagant and crazy. Today's guest, to me, redefines the word hardcore. Quinn was a professional rock climber, a mountain biker, just a general lover of the outdoors. Then one day she had a freak, horrific climbing accident that left her without the use of her legs. So how did she react to this new life? She embraced it and kept doing what she loved. To me, Quinn embraces the word hardcore. She overcame fears and obstacles, and now she's blazing her own path. She hasn't let it stop her, and I was fortunate enough to sit down and talk to her about her life pre-accident and post-accident and get some of her insights on how she lives her life. Can you hear me, Quinn?
And hi, how are you?
Good. How about yourself?
I'm doing all right.
So, what's Moab?
What's what?
What's Moab? You said you were there all week.
Oh yeah, just a town in Utah.
Okay. Don't they do some kind of like ultra marathon running event there or something?
Yeah, I think so. I think they do a few actually. Yeah.
I thought that's what you were doing for some reason. I was like, well, she rock climbs, she runs marathons.
I used to, yeah.
Not me. Too fat for that stuff. So, thank you for agreeing to do a podcast episode. Like I said, I did an episode with the Lockwood Foundation, and he mentioned your name and said I should reach out to you because you're a pretty interesting person. So I guess let's start off with your background. Were you born in Colorado?
Nope, I was born in New Hope, Minnesota.
Ooh, one of the flattest places on earth, and you ended up here.
I know. We had a lot of lakes, though. It was lovely.
Oh, yeah. Did you grow up outdoors, fishing, hunting?
Yeah, totally. We had a cabin up north, and so we'd spend like most of the summers in the cabin, and yeah.
That sounds like a dream. I know we did some vacationing way up north in the Upper Peninsula, but we only went for like 3 or 4 days at a time. I couldn't imagine spending a whole summer somewhere like that.
Oh my God, it was lovely. I mean, you come home with just like your giant mosquito sore, but...
So obviously your whole family was involved in the outdoors. Siblings?
Yep, I have a brother. He's like 4 years older, and same. Yeah, he loved biking and hunting and fishing and all of those things. And it was my dad that I think my mom was into it a little bit, but my dad was the one. It was like his family cabin. So.
Oh, okay. So how did you end up getting from Minnesota to here?
Well, as I grew up, my dad's also family tradition was his family, when he grew up, traveled to national parks of the West. Mm-hmm. And so he started that tradition with my brother and I. So their 2-week summer vacation, we'd work our way west. So like when I was in first grade, we visited the Badlands. And then by the time I'd finished high school, I'd visited all the national parks west of Mississippi, besides Alaska and Hawaii. So it just kind of instilled this sense of like wanting to play outside and loving our public lands. And yeah, and then I met a girlfriend in college, and my parents were moving. My mom was getting transferred to Arizona for work. Uh-huh. And I was like, I don't have their house to crash at anymore. Like in summers in college, you go back and just crash at your parents. And she's like, well, I worked at this camp in Estes Park, Colorado. You should go check it out.
And just like that, that's how you ended up in Colorado, huh?
Yeah, I applied for it, and it's the YMCA of the Rockies. I applied for it and got the job, and didn't hardly want to go back for my senior year of college. I was like, I love Colorado. Holy shit.
Oh, it's so nice, isn't it?
Yeah.
I know these wildfires have been a little crazy, but
yeah,
that's something I wasn't prepared for at all. Coming from Ohio, in Minnesota, we didn't have any experience with wildfires.
No, we get tornadoes, but not yeah.
We didn't even have that. We just had went straight from winter straight to summer. So the wildfires have been a shock to me. And did you end up becoming a park ranger for Rocky Mountain National Park?
I did. Yep. So I lived here in Estes. Like I came for that one summer and I went back and finished my undergraduate degree and then came back the following summer and then traveled around for a little while, like moved to Key West, Florida and Connecticut and just like did random stuff that you do when you're 20, 21.
Uh-huh.
And then I landed back here in Estes, I think when I was like 24 and lived and worked here for like 8 years. And I applied for the Rocky Mountain National Park job for, golly, I think like 3 or 4 years. But it's a small crew. It was only 4 or 5 of them at the time. So I had to wait for somebody to want to leave so finally somebody left and I got a job offer.
Nice. So you said you got your undergraduate degree?
Yep.
Is your degree in something related to outdoor recreation or conservation?
Not really. No, I have my undergraduate in psychology and leadership. Oh. And then I went back to get a graduate degree in education. Okay. And then I started another graduate degree in public policy, but I never finished that one because the university was a little too hippy dippy for me.
Hippy dippy.
We spent like a whole Saturday afternoon talking about washing Ziploc bags, which I do, but I'd like during that classroom time, I like did the math of how much per hour I was spending on listening to people crying about washing Ziploc bags. And I was like, I think this isn't worth my money.
That's so funny. Washing Ziploc bags. That's something my grandmother would have done or did. That and saving aluminum foil.
Yeah. I'm like, I do all those things, but I'm not like, I don't need to talk about it at a university and pay $7,000 for it.
Do you do it out of economy or conservation?
Both.
Yeah.
I'm a cheapskate, so I'm like, I don't need to buy anymore, and they're still good, so let's wash them.
Oh, boy. So once you got into the Rocky Mountain National Park system, is that where you started getting into rock climbing?
No, I'd already been. So I like those national park trips as a youth opened my eyes. Golly, like, I don't know, we were hiking and fishing. And then as you got older, when you're 10, 13, you're rambunctious with energy. And I would take our hiking trips and like scramble up the rocks. And then next thing you know, I was like scrambling up bigger and bigger rocks. And my parents kind of placated that with buying me books on rock climbing. And so I learned like the knots and the systems in a book, John Long's How to Rock Climb book. But by the time I graduated high school, I had like the gear and some know-how, but I still hadn't really been rock climbing.
Did you follow the traditional path of turning into a dirt bag? Did you just kind of hoof it in a van and go climb everywhere?
I did kind of like that graduate school program. That was part of it. And that graduate school program, the public policy one in Seattle, I lived in my Sprinter van throughout the winter there, which was wild. Like Seattle, as you think, is like, mostly 40 and whatever, but it actually snowed that season. Oh. So I lived in my van for a little while. But I was trying to go to graduate school and do all the things as well. It didn't last long. I lived in my van for like a year.
Still, that's a pretty long time. And that's an experience a lot of people don't go through willingly anyway.
Yeah.
Did you find that the dirt bag culture was super supportive? Did you meet other people that were doing the same thing as you?
Oh yeah, tons. Especially, when was I living in my van? 2008. And that's when like Sprinter vans were just like getting hip. And people were living in their Corollas.
Ooh, nope. Couldn't do that. At least the Sprinter van, you got room to stand up. Yeah,
totally. Mine was like a 6'4" inside and like a really long one. But it wasn't like fully built out yet. I just had a cook, like a camp stove in there, and I insulated it. But like the humidity of that 40-degree cold weather in Seattle, it was still quite chilly living in a tin box.
Oh, it'd have to be. I know I was watching Alex Honnold's documentary. What's it called? Solo? Is that what it's called?
Oh, yeah, Free Solo. Yeah.
Yeah, Free Solo. And he kind of gave everybody a little glimpse into his van. And
he's a nice one now.
Yeah, now that he's got sponsors and all that stuff. But I didn't realize you could modify a van to that extent and make it that comfortable.
I know. And see, the dirt bag's still in me. I've been looking now as a wheelchair user. There's a guy, you should actually look him up. And I think his Instagram handle for his van life is called Impact Overland. And his name is Kirk Williams. He's a higher level injury than I am. He's a quadriplegic, so he has like reduced hand function. But he like him and his brother drove down to Argentina, all the way down to the southern tip this year. And unfortunately, they were in Buenos Aires when like COVID started really kicking off. So they were kind of like had to get a place actually to rent in Buenos Aires and be isolated. And he's finally home, but it ruined his giant. He had a year-long road trip planned to live in his van and road trip. And he's got this sick system to get his wheelchair in and out, like not the huge ramp thing. He's got this like a climbing rigging system, like 2 cords that come and clip to your wheelchair, and then so it's like way less space occupying. And I've been like, I want that.
It's so funny. I guess what I describe as sick is some of the kayak setups I've seen. I've never thought about sick setups for wheelchair ramps.
Yeah. And I have another friend, Josh, who he didn't want the whole huge ramp, so he made himself like a drawbridge in his Sprinter van. So he has like a wooden beam that goes down, and then he uses a piece of rope to pull himself up.
Wow. Okay. We're going to talk about your accident, but I want to get up to that point first. So you go on to graduate school, living in your van. When did rock climbing become something serious for you, more than just a hobby?
I think I'd always loved it. Like in college, I tried indoor competition once, and I wasn't really down with it. Like my foot slipped off and you only got 1 try. And I was like, but I know I can do it. My foot slipped. And so when I moved, after I graduated college and moved here to Estes, I was really into biking actually when I first moved here, mountain biking, but the mountain biking in Estes is like, and you can drive to the Front Range. Like I would drive every afternoon after finishing work at the YMCA and go down to Lions or go down to Devil's Backbone. But then it just became more convenient to stay up here, and a lot more rock climbers up here. So I started getting into it, when I was like 23, 24. And I think every year it just kind of blossomed. Like with trad climbing here in Estes Park, what a great place to practice and learn. Like I could start out at climbing and leading 5/6s, and then I was like, okay, I think I'm pretty good at that. All right, I'll try 5/7s, and then I'll try 5/8s, and then I'll try 5/9s. So I just worked my way through the grades. So it just was a really logical progression.
You said trad climbing.
Yeah.
What's that? I know nothing about rock climbing, so this is a brand new experience for me.
Yeah, so there's a few different forms of climbing, but traditional climbing or trad climbing is one where there's not that's what the people you see have all their gear on their harness, like all these cams and widgets and all of these things that are jangling around on their harness around their waist. Mm-hmm. So as you climb, you're placing the gear, and then the person behind you is removing the gear. So you're not leaving anything on the rock.
Oh, okay.
Where sport climbing, for instance, that's where there's like pre-established bolts already in the rock. And so when you climb, you clip a bolt, and you have these little things called quick draws that one clips to the bolt, and then the other end, you clip your rope through it as you pass by.
Okay. Did you have someone that got you involved in that, or like what you would consider a mentor for climbing?
I did. Yeah. When I moved here, there's a lot of local folks and badasses, like Tommy Caldwell's from this town, Paige Clausen's from this town, Kelly Cordes. But I met some of the old school badasses, like Ed's Cantina is a very popular restaurant up here, and everyone after climbing would get margaritas. And I met these 2 older gentlemen, Scott Kimball and Douglas Snively. And Douglas Snively and I just hit it off, and we literally would go climbing like once a week for the next 10, 15 years. And he taught, and he's the one who would be like, because he established a lot of these rock climbing routes. Like he was the first ascensionist or part of that group in the 1970s. And so he just took me out at Lumpy Ridge and handed me that rack of gear and was like, onward you go.
And just let you lead the way.
Yeah, let me lead the way and let me figure it out. And all of my first alpine climbs were with him. Like the first time I climbed Hallett's Peak, or the first time I climbed the Diamond on Long's Peak, I did with Douglas. Yeah.
So as far as famous climbs, does Colorado have some really like world-class climbing?
We do. Yeah. Like Long's Peak, where is in my backyard. That's like a huge 1,000-foot face that is gorgeous granite that's also at 13,000 feet, so it's a challenge to a lot of people. Mm-hmm. We have the Black Canyon of the Gunnison, which is this incredible
that's one of my favorite places.
God, it's a beautiful place and intimidating as a climber. Like the rock is intimidating, and also you hike in, so your only way out is either hiking up a huge poison ivy gully or climbing out.
Oh yeah, it's a rough place.
Yeah.
Okay, so you've got this world-class climber that's training you. When did your accident happen and where was it?
My accident happened in Yosemite National Park on October 11, 2017.
Also, you weren't even in Colorado.
No, I had literally just, so as a climbing ranger, there's two full-time climbing rangers here in Rocky. But I was a seasonal along with, at the time, three others. And now the team's grown to like 7 or 8. But the seasonals, we work usually from like May to end of September or into October. So I'd literally been done with work here in Rocky for like 5 days. And then I usually make my annual fall pilgrimage out to Yosemite in the fall and meet people and climb for a month. So I had been there 3 or 4 days.
Wow. Did someone go with you on that trip or was it just you?
Nope, I drove by myself out from Colorado. And then I met a whole bunch. I have a lot of friends that live there and a lot of girlfriends that live nearby. So I met 2 really good girlfriends right away, Libby Sauter and Josie McKee. And we had a few days of climbing and Libby's birthday. And then my other friend Lauren was there and we climbed El Cap actually 2 days before El Capitan, which is like the big 3,000-foot mountain. We climbed that and put a speed record up on it, Josie, Lauren, and I, on a route called the Triple Direct. I think that was Sunday or Monday, and then I fell on the nose on a Wednesday.
Okay, the nose. That's another route or another climb, like a different place?
Yeah, no, that's the same mountain. So El Capitan, but that's a world class, like world famous route. Like people from all over the world come and climb this route. It's like a 30 pitch route, so 3,000 feet up the very prominent, like El Cap kind of has a junction, and that's called the nose, and that's the route follows up that junction.
Do you know what happened? What caused the accident?
Yeah, as I was joking with you earlier about like doing that first indoor competition in college, and my foot slipped, and I was irritated because I didn't get another shot. Essentially, that's what happened. We were doing a speed ascent. We were definitely going for efficiency. We weren't necessarily trying to break a record that day, but we were trying to get our time down, dwindle it down for a bigger adventure that we had planned. And in doing those speed adventures, you're moving quickly. Yes. Like when you watch that movie with Tommy and Alex, their like heart rate is really high. And my girlfriend Josie and I, we'd climb this route a whole bunch of times, and we're moving fast, but we're not like running. Like our heart rate's not like 160 like those boys when you see them in the movie. Right. But so we're moving quickly, but the tactics are similar in that you use less gear and you're just trying to be as efficient as possible. So I was using less gear. I didn't have, I had one piece of gear in, and I think that foot slipped, and then I fell 120 feet and hit another rock, a flake right below me, which that's the unfortunate part. Like both Tommy and Alex and many people have taken big falls. Like I had a rope, and I always climb that mountain with a rope. But because of the distance between my pieces of gear and unfortunately that piece of rock that jutted out beneath me, I hit that piece of rock. Whereas other people have fallen in different spots and have had a clean fall.
Mm-hmm. A clean, scary fall. That's still horrific.
Still scary, but right. Like I unfortunately had that piece of rock below me called a flake, and I hit it with my shoulder blade in my back, and I burst my T12 vertebrae, and I damaged my spinal cord.
Do you remember that? Or was it one of those things when you impacted, that was it?
I kind of remember like seeing the granite whooshing before my eyes, like very quickly. I don't remember the impact. And I do remember waking up behind the flake with my climbing partner and then the rescue team that was helicoptered into the mountain. I vaguely remember that, but now it's like, distant memory.
Did they tell you how long it took to get a rescue team out there? And furthermore, how did they get you off the mountain?
Yeah, so I am very fortunate in that because of the work that I was doing in Rocky as a search and rescue climbing ranger, like this, what happened to me is essentially what I was doing here in Rocky, rescuing people who have a bad day in the mountains. And so luckily my climbing partner, Josie McKee, she worked in Yosemite as one of these rescue rangers. So she knew the numbers to call. She knew the people to call. And luckily there's phone service on the mountain. She called immediately and like didn't get the answer she wanted. So she made another phone call and like expressed the dire need that her climbing partner had taken a tragic fall. And because most of the search and rescue team at least knew my name, or I was friends with them, I was staying at one of their houses in the valley. It's not that they wouldn't have expedited for anybody else, but they definitely, for me, they definitely pushed the limits, I think, a little bit. Like the winds were high and they flew a helicopter. So what they do is they have a gentleman below the helicopter attached to a rope, and the helicopter lifts off, and the rescuer is below the rope, below the helicopter, like 100, 200 feet. And then they gently swing him into the mountain, and Josie helped grab him, and he climbs into the mountain. He unclips from the helicopter. The helicopter flies away. So they did that to 2 rescuers. They hauled them into the mountain, and then when they had packaged me up, put me in the little litter, like carrying device, and strapped me in and put my helmet back on because my helmet had flung off on impact. Then they did they reversed those methods. So then they swung a line in to the rescuer, and he was clipped to me and the litter carrier. And then we swung away from the mountain and landed in the meadow, like not very far away from the cliff itself.
And from there, they took you to...
Yep. So then from there, they transferred me. So that's a helicopter that Yosemite has for rescues in particular. They use it often. And then, so I got off that helicopter and unclipped and everything. And then they transferred me to a medical helicopter that had come from a local hospital.
How close is the closest hospital?
The one that they flew me to, golly, is like 100 miles or so. It's in Modesto, California.
Oh, so that's not too awful far then.
Not too awful far. The flight was really quick, but that's where, as soon as they transferred me to the medics, that's when I got a shot of pain medicine, and I was out.
So quick detour. Let's talk about how cool and controlled your friend had to be to keep her head about her, to do the things that she did. Plus the search and rescue guys being so well trained to do their jobs efficiently. So being a park ranger, what's the training look like to get you to the point where you can be a search and rescue team member?
All of us are medics of some sort. So you have to be an EMT or higher up, a paramedic. I'm an EMT, and Josie's a EMT as well. And a lot of that is, I think, personality, if you're driven and interested in wilderness medicine, but also a lot of the wilderness medicine courses, we really hone in on doing scenarios. And yes, we're using like fake blood and fake vomit and all of those things, but we're really like making you look as close as we can to a person that's bleeding with an amputation and they're gushing blood, or whatever it is that we're trying to teach you. And that visual, I think, is a huge help in like your brain. Yes, you're not seeing real blood, but your patients are acting like they have a head injury or that they really fell and they really are traumatic. So the better acting that you can do and the better props that you can do for your patients, the better it prepares us to feel like we've already seen it, and to just train like that calming, like, okay, this is what we do now. Step, 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 step. You just break it down to the little steps that you need to do and not get overwhelmed with the surrounded scenario.
We did mock crashes at our high school because it was a really prevalent thing. Every year there was a kid that died in a car wreck. So they tried to bring awareness to it by doing the mock crashes, and they'd march us out there. We'd see the scene all set up. They have a wrecked car and a couple of kids out there acting. I never felt like it was that effective, but the way you describe it, that kind of makes all the difference.
Yeah. I mean, if your brain is already visually seeing like, okay, I've seen this, I can handle this. Like it's not, and you just know going in like, okay, especially here in Rocky, like we have a lot of time to hike to our rescues. So you have a lot of time to think of like, okay, what are the scenarios? What are we going to see? What might it look like? What can we do?
Okay. Back to your accident. After you got to the hospital, I assume they rushed you into surgery?
They didn't, in fact, which is like a point of contention. I think it became like, families and drama and everyone's personality of how you handle traumatic things. That became, and I had a lot of friends because I was so close to Yosemite, and it was October, which is incredible climbing season in Yosemite. So a lot of people showed up into the hospital to visit me and chat with me and offer their help before my parents arrived. And then my parents finally arrived from Phoenix. My mom was like on a business trip in Cancun, so she had to, work her way home expeditedly. So there was kind of a lot of like, should we transfer her to another hospital to get better care? Because Modesto is just like the one they're good. They knew the surgery is the same for everyone. We're going to just put a metal rod in your back and straighten you out. But nowadays there's a little bit more like, do you do hypothermia? Do you do like, what do you call it when you're lacking oxygen? Like there's all these therapies that they try to do.
Like the hyperbaric chamber and stuff?
Yeah, hyperbaric chamber kind of stuff. Like, there's all these random therapies that have been proven to work in acute. So like in the very first couple 72 hours of your injury to reduce the swelling that happens around the spinal cord. So there was a lot of like discussion back and forth between friends and family and what should we do? So my surgery didn't happen I fell on Wednesday and I didn't have the surgery till Monday.
Wow. That's a long time, it sounds like.
It is a long time. And it was supposed to happen on a Saturday, but then I think I'm not really sure what happened there, and I wasn't the most coherent to be like advocating for myself.
I laugh now, but at the time it was probably very serious. Probably no one was laughing.
No, and everyone's doing the best they can, but just a lot of personality dynamic.
Okay, so they do the surgery, and what are they telling you the future is going to look like? Are they telling you that you're not going to walk anymore? That's it.
Yep, definitely telling me I wasn't going to walk again. Definitely a lot of, and again, back to the family dynamic or friend dynamic. Spinal cord injury is very A, traumatic, and B, nuanced. Like a millimeter sized bruise here could mean that you have no hand function. Like it's just, the spinal cord itself has its own anatomy with sensation on one side and motor movement on another side and little block, just like our brain. Like you have music in one little spot of your brain, but there's also little blurbs that music is elsewhere in your brain. And so most doctors say to most people with spinal cord injuries, you will never. And there's also this spectrum of like you're a complete injury or an incomplete injury. And my family and friends, I was diagnosed as a complete injury. And when friends and family heard that, they assumed that it meant completely severed, which it's not.
Okay.
It just means I completely have no motor or sensation below that vertebrae that I injured. It doesn't mean that my spinal cord is completely severed, which to me, like, I really clung on to that because I was like, okay, it's not completely severed. There's still something there. Maybe something will squeak by and I'll get something.
Did the doctors explain to you that wasn't the case? And did it change your outlook on it?
No, they didn't. Unfortunately, in Modesto, they just did that. It was kind of like, okay, you did your surgery. Your spine looked bad. You probably aren't going to walk again. That was kind of the extent of the conversation I had with the doctors. And I think the nurses that were there, because I was there for 5 weeks, the nurses were more empathetic, and that's where it definitely was learned. Like, I probably will not. But the I don't know, optimism in me and the medical, because I have a medical professional background, like, I was like, maybe there's something, maybe there's hope, maybe I can just mentally override this system. But that doesn't work. As tough as you can be. It is what it is.
As optimistic as you were after you got out of the hospital and after the realization set in that, the results of your injury, did you have a hard time coping with that?
Yes, it ebbs and flows. I mean, just like with anything of grief, I love that somebody told me early on, like grief, imagine like Santa Claus carrying presents and all the presents are grief and he's got a hole in his bag on the back. And every once in a while, blame will drop out and you got to pick it up and put it back in. And then every once in a while, hope will drop out and you got to pick it up and put it back in. So definitely the process was definitely heavy in denial originally. And I think also I hit my head and you're just like spinal cord injury isn't just the lack of like my legs now. It's a lot internally, like my bladder and my bowel function is different. Like I don't have sensation in my legs or anything below my waist. And so learning all of those processes again, like you're an adult and a newborn, like learning how to pee again, learning how to poop again, learning how to communicate, because now you have needs that are actually dire and you got to communicate those.
After going through all the stages of grief, coming out the other side, being the strong, optimistic person you are, was there kind of a turning point where you looked at yourself and said, okay, I'm not, just because I'm paralyzed from the waist down doesn't mean I'm incapable?
Yeah, I think there's been shining moments of that. Like I specifically remember a first moment I left maybe a year after my injury, I did my first solo road trip, and that was huge. Like I got in my van. I have a Toyota Sienna now. And I got in my van and I drove to San Diego to visit some friends and do this yoga for paralysis video. And my friend and I were going around the San Diego Zoo, and going up this, I was just pushing my wheelchair up this really big hill, the San Diego Zoo. And I just kind of looked around me, and I just had this, at the time it felt good, but it also felt like, how arrogant am I? Like I just looked around the crowd and I was like, I am still more capable than most of these people. But that, I don't know, that was a really good shining moment for me to like recognize, like, yes, I may be in this wheelchair, but like I can still kick ass, and I can still be a useful and productive and like beautiful member of society. And those moments were far and few between at the initial of the injury. And I feel like, there's still days I cry and I'm still angry and the grief comes back in waves. But the distance between the crying has definitely gotten further and further.
And, knowing what you know now, do you do any kind of outreach or group communication with other people that are in the same situation as you?
I do. And that's where I feel lucky. Like before my injury, I really struggled with social media, and the time in the hospital, actually, like I turned on my Instagram and I had so many private messages from others with this injury. And they became just incredible resources. Like, I mean, to be able to talk to complete strangers across the world about peeing and pooping and sex and all of the things. Yeah, it's wild, but after with this injury, I feel like it's really eye-opening in how much you are just exceptionally like 180 exposed, like from putting fingers in your buttholes to everyone seeing you naked. Like that is just the way this injury is. And so I feel like the shame level for us as a community is just like, we got to talk about this stuff because it happens. Like we pee ourselves, we poop ourselves. There's lots of stuff that happen. We pass out because of our blood pressure. Like, let's talk about it. So that community was really incredible for me and helped me feel, just answered a lot of questions and helped give me belonging, which you need.
Do you still get out and climb?
I have a little bit. Yes. It's obviously not as lovely as it used to be. Like for me, climbing was something that, was kind of like dancing on the rock. Like I really enjoyed the movement and the grace of it, and also the mental challenge. And so now going rock climbing is just kind of doing a pull-up, like with no legs, just doing a pull-up from hold to hold, which isn't as glorious, and your knees are kind of scraping along the rock. Mm-hmm. But for me, what I miss most, like I was also, like a biker and a runner. And the thing I miss the most is the movement across the earth, like hiking and running. And I have found that I have a hand cycle, an off-road hand cycle. So it looks like a mountain bike, but I pedal it with my hands. And then I have a Nordic ski bucket. So I sit in this Nordic ski with two skis below me that are fixed to like, if you were to go to like a Nordic ski track, the exact track width. Mm-hmm. I found that those two things for me allow me to traverse the earth like I love and miss.
Do you feel like in any national park or state park setting, do you feel like they have appropriate accommodations for people that have disabilities? Or do you feel like there needs to be some work done there?
Yes, there needs to be some work done there. Unfortunately, I mean, for example, in national parks, and I am an employee of the national park, so I'm back with the national parks and I'm doing this exact work. But I'm trying to advocate for, like now we do have these fantastic devices which do allow us more mobility off trail or in the backcountry, rather than off trail. But we don't want that 1 mile paved trail in the middle of the park. Like if you've been here to Rocky, we get Bear Lake, Sprague Lake, Lily Lake. Like those are the busiest areas of the park. And they're 1 mile of pavement. So I don't get a wilderness or solitude experience. Yeah. And so I'm trying to bring that, the work that the national park is doing is trying to bring that awareness around. Like, you know what, we can. Like trails in wilderness don't necessarily need to be changed much. Like everyone could use the trail to have steps that aren't huge and totally rutted out and washed out from horses or from water erosion. Like little kids and old people too. Like we all like having steps that don't hurt our knees. And for me, with my mobility devices, steps that are not, 1.5 feet, maybe 10 inches or under, work great. So the trail doesn't need to be like paved or modified really in much ways, it can still be a wilderness experience. It can just a few obstacles could be pushed aside.
I want to mention Alex Honnold again. Seeing guys like him that, free solo, which I guess, do you want to explain free soloing just a little bit for people that might not know what it is?
Yeah, so in that movie, he's climbing that exact same cliff. He's a little bit left, doing a path that's a little bit further left of where I had fallen. But free soloing is different than free climbing. So free climbing is where you have a rope and gear and all of those things. That's what my partner Josie and I were doing that day. We have a rope between us and we're placing gear between us. Free soloing is where you don't have a rope or any gear. It's just your rock shoes and your chalk bag and you going up the mountain.
Yeah, okay, so the free climbing, one's acting as a belay for the other. So if you have a fall, the other person arrests that fall.
Correct, because you have a rope and gear in the system. And that's where, right, Josie and I were doing that, but I didn't have very much gear in the system because we were trying to move fast and efficiently.
And Alex has nothing,
Correct.
just air.
Yep.
Okay, I watched that movie and I got super sweaty. I had a hard time. I would cringe, just thinking about what could happen. And I thought while I was watching that, how irresponsible for somebody to do something like that because it's ultra dangerous. But you had some sort of safety net, and here you are.
Yeah, I mean, our passions are our passions, and Alex is the most incredibly talented rock climber in the world. Physically, yes, but mentally, he is on a different realm. Berkeley's actually done studies on his amygdala and his fear response, which he doesn't have much of. So yes, you can criticize him, but he is well aware of the risks, and he is well aware of, just like all of us getting in the car, we all are well aware that car accidents happen, but we're like, it won't happen to us. And I think to put Alex more, give some perspective, he is aware of the risk and he is aware it will and could happen to him. Whereas my injury, and because I have these safety systems, we have our airbags, we can drive slow, we can do this, then it probably won't happen to me. I feel like I was more naive in that regard of I have these safety systems in place, so therefore I am okay.
Yeah, his comment was, if he is scared on the mountain, something's wrong.
Correct.
And I guess that clarity and that calm, that's a 1 in a million kind of person.
Yeah, and that acceptance of the risk, which I feel like a lot of people, driving our car, we don't necessarily accept that there could be a risk if it's icy out. And same with me, I knew that there was risk, but it's hard to describe. I don't think I wasn't naive to it because I'd seen friends die. I'd been on mountains with friends who have died. But there's always just that place in the back of your brain that's it's not that I'm not, it's not going to happen to me, but somewhere it is. We don't want to access that part of our brain, the truth of it. And Alex is really good at accessing the truth.
Oof. Yeah, he's a special person. So what's the future hold for you? Are you going to stay involved with the national parks and just keep doing what you love?
I hope so. I feel really lucky to have returned to the national park in this multi-role of getting wilderness accessibility and outdoor recreation combined for people of all abilities. And for me, that's really what I'm passionate about. My little pipe dream is, of course, wanting to live back in a van. How do I convince the national park that we need a Sprinter van? And then I can get a whole bunch of mobility devices and a trailer and just go from national park to national park and get people in the disability community out on these machines, because a lot of people don't know that they exist. They're incredibly expensive, and a lot of people don't know that we can use them as our mobility devices hiking. We are allowed anywhere with our devices, anywhere foot travel is allowed. So that's my little pipe dream, is let's get a van and travel to national parks and let people see these devices so they can get back out there, because that's what I needed. Yes, I miss rock climbing, but I just miss a mountain summit and a solitude experience.
Yeah. That's fantastic. I just noticed you have a poop pillow on your couch. Oh boy. Okay. Quinn, I've got a kid out there that's starting to get a little restless on me. So do you have any kind of last words of encouragement for new rock climbers or people that have had an accident? Just what can you say to them about what you do?
Well, I think one is community. So if you are feeling lost out there, reach out and don't have an ego about, with me with rock climbing. I was afraid to reach out, especially to female rock climbers who were badasses, because I was like, I'm not good enough, or they don't know me. But I just had to get over myself and reach out to them. And then most of them became really good friends and good climbing partners and adventure partners and even friends today. So just getting over your own personal ego or that barrier of like, I'm not good enough, or they don't want to talk to me, or they don't want to, yeah. And same with the disability community. If you want to get out there, reach out to me. I have 2 off-road hand cycles, so let's get out there.
Awesome. Quinn, thanks for telling me your story. I appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, Zach.
Absolutely.
It was so much fun talking to Quinn. I really appreciated her taking time out of her day to let me know a little bit about her life. She's a true inspiration, and I think we could all try to live a little bit more like her. If you want to follow us on Facebook, you can go to 12 Hike. We also have an Instagram page, 12 Hike Challenge, and a YouTube page, 12 Hike. Pop over to our Facebook page and you can check out some of our merchandise. We're selling hats, shirts, sweaters, stickers, pins, notebooks, just a little bit of everything. If you see something you like, click that order button. And I will be back next week with a new episode. You guys have a good week.